Well, Molly, I don't think, look, the draft isn't about fairness. That's really not what it's about. And I think the reason why I say that is because I've said numerous different times, this whole process is very subjective, all right? It's very opinionated. There's human beings who are trying to assess players and their fit relative to the NFL and relative to their own, individual franchises. And that's an ongoing year-long process, multi-year long process, because scouts, even though we're primarily concentrating on Shedeur, this year and maybe even last, has spoken. Whether we like it or not, the draft spoke. And somewhere along the line, people were not comfortable with the risk that would be associated with taking him in the first, second, third, or fourth round. That doesn't mean I agree with it. That doesn't mean that anybody agrees with it. That just means that that's what the teams felt. So now for him, he's going to have to go back and look at that process and say, hey, look, what was it during that process that somehow made these people, meaning the 32 teams, feel as though I wasn't worthy of being picked much higher than I was? Pay attention to those things. Make the kind of course corrections that he needs to, and now compete his rear end off to win the job, which he is fully capable of doing in Cleveland.
I think the NFL sent the message. And the message that was sent was, you are not that guy. Or, as people like to say, you are not him. Because what I've seen, and what many folks have seen year after year after year, if you have that type of talent, regardless of off the field, interviews, guess what? You're going to get picked high, because the NFL teams are in the winning business. They're not in the business of allowing elite talent to just continue to fall. It just doesn't happen that way. Do we see guys slip some? Absolutely. We've seen guys have egregious things in their background where they might slip, but ultimately the NFL is in a talent acquisition business. If they feel like a guy can help us win right now, they're not going to sit there and pass over a guy time after time after time. And so when you talk about Shedeur Sanders, that's part of the equation. The other part of the equation is, okay, if this guy's coming in and he's not that guy, if he's going to be maybe a backup quarterbacks are obscure. They're not guys that's in the forefront. And so if you're a team, do you want a guy that's going to come in with all the celebrity, everything that comes with Shedeur Sanders? You have to think that's part of a big part of the reason why a guy like Shedeur Sanders can tumble all the way to the 5th round. This is the league speaking. This is not, we can sit here and pontificate about Shedeur Sanders and why we thought that he should have been drafted higher. But ultimately, at the end of the day, 32 teams out there sent a message that said, you know what? You're just not him. That's what they said to everyone.
Stephen A., to that you say what?
I think that Damian is saying what I'm about to say in a roundabout way. Louis Riddick, I'm going to be straight up and down with you because you know how much I revere you. I completely disagree with you with what you're saying, and I'm disappointed in what you didn't say. A lot of this was about primetime Deion Sanders. You can say whatever you want to the audience out there, to these idiotic trolls all over social media talking about, Shedeur Sanders wasn't that great or whatever. There is no one, I repeat, no one that looked at Shedeur Sanders and even had him less than the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. This is a quarterback-driven league. This guy was considered one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft. And 143 picks came and went before you heard his name. Don't talk to me about football. I don't want to hear a damn thing about football. This ain't about football. This is about something else. And I said that even though it's different, I brought up the name Colin Kaepernick. And why? I didn't sit up there and throw a pity party for Colin Kaepernick. I knew his career in the NFL was over the minute that the NFL organized that workout for him at the Atlanta Falcons practice facility, which was led by Jay-Z and those cats and Roger Goodell and what have you, and he elected not to show up and instead tried to have the workout an hour and 20 minutes away, and he going to notify them 2 to 3 hours before the workout. I said he is done. And I have no sympathy because, damn it, they tried to make it happen because the league had to do it because the owners didn't want to. It's an accident that no owner in the National Football League wanted to touch him. We can use the word collusion. It ain't necessary. They think alike in a lot of different situations. They don't have to collude with one another. There's a universal understanding that this is our league, and we want to do what we want to do the way that we want to do it. And we'll be damned if anybody's going to tell us what to do because guess what? We running the show, and people going to come. They're going to flock to the stadium. They're going to have their tailgate parties. We going to win in the ratings. We going to make damn near $250 million apiece as an owner. Ain't a damn thing anybody's going to do about it. We understood that years ago. But suddenly we're going to engage in collective amnesia here. Hold on, Molly, because this is very important. Primetime Deion Sanders' hands are not clean in this. Shedeur Sanders' hands are not clean on this. If you go into an interview and people thinking that you brash and arrogant and what have you, and they think that they're going to have a problem working with you, that's partially on you. Primetime Deion Sanders going out publicly and stating on the record, there's a couple of teams we might not want him with, and he ain't going there if we gonna get him, if they're gonna select him. And he's on Tamron Hall's show, and she's like, "What if your son don't listen?" He said, "Who? What? Like that ain't gonna happen." You look at NFL teams, along with the specter of people potentially calling for him to be the next coach. You can understand the reticence, but for 143
Stephen A, hold that thought, because you brought up three points, and I want Lewis to respond. The first point is the football aspect of him being the third quarterback on everyone. Then there's the Deion aspect, and then there's the Shedeur aspect. So let's tackle them one by one. First, Lewis, can you respond to Stephen A's sentiment about that he was the third best quarterback on everybody's draft board?
At least.
And this didn't have anything to do with play?
If not two, top two.
Look, like I said, evaluating players is highly subjective. Do I believe that he was – okay, let's just put it this way. Do I believe that he was worse than Dillon Gabriel, who I love? I love Dillon Gabriel as a person, watched him live as a player multiple times. No, he's better than Dillon Gabriel.
That's right.
He's a better football player than Dillon Gabriel. Okay, as simple as that. What I wanted to say, though, is this. Stephen, I've said multiple times, of course Deion's specter, Deion's aura, Deion's presence has something to do with this. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the process that has nothing to do with on the football field. When teams are evaluating Shedeur from January, February, March, April, all of that comes along with him, the people who are with him, the people who are going to be his inner circle. How is he going to be as far as how's he going to be advised? All the people who play a prominent role in his life and they're advising him, directing him, influencing him. Of course, teams evaluate all of that. Some people are going to be very, very influenced and very intimidated by the magnitude of Deion Sanders. Of course they are. Of course they are. What I said, though, was this. When you're going through this process, you have to do a certain amount of making sure that you convince the 32 different teams that they're going to get something that does nothing but benefit their organization on and off the field. And you have to eliminate as many questions as you can, so then it really just becomes about your play on the field. Because his play on the field warranted him being picked much higher than he was picked. But this was not about that. This was about everything else. I know it was about everything else because there was no other reason for him to fall. This was about the process, to me, from January up until the day that the draft happened, that somewhere along the line teams got uncomfortable with it. I feel like it's so layered. It's so layered.
Well, but let's get into the layers.
You'll never get a straight answer about it.
We're dancing around it. So why is Deion to blame? Or how could Shedeur have been better in the interviews? Like, let's get to what really went down.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Lewis. Go ahead.
No, I'll say this. Look,
Fifth round.
The greater the top.
Chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Ngày hôm nay mình sẽ tiếp tục hướng dẫn các bạn làm vòng. Và hôm nay của mình sẽ có tiêu đề là túi bóng. Mọi người, hôm nay tiêu đề mình có là lót chuột. Bây giờ mình bắt đầu làm nha.